Welcome to this channel of intense life stories, where quiet betrayals, slow burn horror, and unexpected justice turn into a kind of confession that could belong to anyone. If you like realistic, emotional stories, make yourself comfortable, turn up the volume, and stay with me until the end, because today I'm going to tell you how a shout about a small bottle of vinegar broke something inside me, how I walked away from a life that was killing me slowly, and how a wedding toast in a vineyard exposed everything my ex-wife tried so hard to hide. My name is Marcos Rivera. I'm 55 years old, and about 7 months ago, I did something a lot of men my age only daydream about while they're stuck in traffic on the ring road going to work. I divorced my wife after 29 years of marriage, turned almost everything I owned into what could fit in 2 suitcases, and moved to a small apartment in Portugal. No dramatic scenes in the doorway, no plates breaking, no shouting in the street. Just a stack of divorce papers under a salt shaker, the house keys on top of them, and a short note next to a cold coffee cup. All of this is yours now. I'm gone. In my old life, in the Spanish city of Montera, I was a successful commercial real estate developer. I built shopping centers and office parks, those anonymous buildings that make every modern city look like a copy of the last one. I made good money. People in my field respected me. And I owned a beautiful apartment in the fancy Colina Norte district, decorated by my wife Laura, as if every corner were posing for a magazine. From the outside, we looked like a perfect couple. On the inside, I felt like I was suffocating. Laura was a high-end real estate agent, selling multi-million euro properties to tech executives and foreign investors. Somewhere along the road, she decided our own life had to match the lifestyle she was selling. Nothing was ever enough. If we had granite countertops, they suddenly had to be marble. If we had marble, it had to be imported. If it was imported, it had to come from a very specific quarry that almost nobody else even knew existed. Every improvement came with a complaint. Every complaint came with a comparison. After about 24 years of marriage, I stopped arguing. Around year 27, I started sleeping in my home office, telling myself it was because of my work. By year 29, I realized I was living with a stranger who shared my last name and my mortgage, but not my heart. We have 2 children. My daughter Elena is 28, an investigative journalist in a coastal city called Puerto Azul. She's sharp. She inherited my skepticism and her mother's persistence. She saw through Laura's performance years before I had the courage to leave. Then there's my son Daniel, 25, a junior investment analyst in the financial district of Zurich. He's a good man, but he swallowed his mother's version of reality whole. In his eyes, I was the problem. Cold, distant, emotionally unavailable. Those were Laura's words coming straight out of his mouth. The crack in my life became impossible to ignore the night Laura screamed at me in front of her dinner guests because I brought the wrong bottle of balsamic vinegar to the table. It wasn't aged enough. It didn't come from the right region. It didn't look expensive in the photos she wanted to post later. She raised her voice, insulted my taste, and rolled her eyes in front of everyone. I remember staring at the little dark bottle in my hand and feeling something inside my chest shut down quietly. That was the moment I stopped loving her, even if it took me months to act on it. The heart attack arrived a little later, about 4 months before I left. A mild one, according to the doctors. Not the type that kills you on the spot, just the kind that whispers in your ear that the next one might finish the job. My cardiologist said the word stress so many times in one appointment that I lost count, but I remember him repeating it at least a dozen times. That day I drove home, walked in, and saw Laura yelling into her phone about staging a luxury property. As I watched her pacing through the designer living room, every detail perfectly arranged, I understood something very simple. I could die in that apartment, and she would not notice until someone complained that my body was blocking the path to her walk-in closet. So I started planning, quietly and methodically. I spent about 7 months restructuring everything. I moved my assets into a family trust with Elena as administrator. I refinanced properties with loans Laura knew nothing about. All perfectly legal, all properly documented, but arranged in a way that made sense for me and not for the image she protected so carefully. In the end, the apartment, the cars, the furniture, all of it stayed in her name, along with the debts that kept the illusion standing. On the morning I left, Montero was still dark. I drove to the international airport, parked in long-term parking, and didn't look back. By the time Laura woke up and found my note, my keys and the papers, I was already on a plane heading west, watching the coastline from the window and feeling something I hadn't felt in years: relief. Now I wake up in an old building in the Portuguese city of Porto Velho, to the sound of church bells in the Ribeira Alta district. I drink an espresso that actually tastes like coffee. I walk along the river watching the boats slide by. I paint badly. I swim in the cold ocean. And I've learned just enough Portuguese to order wine and apologize for my terrible accent. I haven't spoken to Laura since the day I walked out. I didn't check her social media, didn't ask mutual friends about her. I didn't have to. I knew exactly how she would act. She'd pretend to be heartbroken for a week, she'd be furious for 2, and then she would find someone new to plug into the empty space where I used to be. And I was right. My ex-wife remarried quickly. I found out because of a message from someone I barely remembered, but that part comes later. For now, imagine me sitting on my small balcony in Porto Velho, watching the sunset turn the river into a strip of molten gold, about to tell you what happened when Laura's newly polished perfect life collided with the past she tried so hard to erase. Life in Porto Velho moved at a pace I'd forgotten existed. No alarms at dawn, no video calls at ridiculous hours, no Laura's voice slicing through the morning to ask why I bought the wrong kind of organic coffee. Just me, the Atlantic breeze, and a city that had survived earthquakes, floods, and bad governments, and still somehow remembered how to breathe. I'd been there about 4 months when the message arrived. I was in my usual spot, a tiny cafe up the hill where the owner, Paulo, had stopped correcting my Portuguese and just smiled when I ordered. I was sketching the crooked rooftops when my phone buzzed. It was a direct message on social media from an old classmate called Martin Costa, someone I hadn't seen since we were young men in university. His profile picture showed gray hair at his temples, a lazy smile, and a happy golden dog next to him. The message was short. Hey Marcos, long time. Not sure if you care, but thought you should know. Laura is getting married. Next month. Big vineyard wedding in Valle Sereno. The guy's name is Victor Lima. He owns a chain of luxury car dealerships. Figured you might want a heads up. Take care, man. I read it twice, set the phone down, and wrapped my fingers around my coffee cup. It felt warm and solid, like something I could trust. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was curious. The kind of curiosity you feel about a movie you walked out of halfway through. You don't want to go back in, but you wonder how badly it all falls apart at the end. I knew the name. Victor Lima. A flashy type. The kind of guy who shows up at industry events wearing suits that scream "look at me" before he even says hello. He always drove a different luxury car to each networking event, like his own rolling advertisement. I remembered him flirting with Laura at a charity gala a few years back. She had laughed too loudly at his jokes, the kind of laugh designed to be heard by everyone nearby. I opened my laptop. Of course, Victor's profile was public. So was Laura's. She lives for attention. Their photos looked exactly as I expected. Engagement shots that must have cost a small fortune. Laura in pale dresses, Victor in dark suits, both holding glasses of sparkling wine at a sunset that looked just a bit too perfect, like it had been polished by a photo editor. The captions read like greeting card poetry written by someone who has never actually read a real poem. When you know, finally found my forever. Some people are worth the wait. I scroll through the comments. Friends gushing, clients sucking up to her, and a couple of brave souls asking what had happened to me. Those comments have been deleted, but the gaps in the numbering gave them away. Then I saw the location tagged on one of the posts. Hacienda Tres Venus, Valle Sereno. Something clicked in my brain, sharp and precise. I closed the app and opened a folder on my laptop marked Old Projects. It took me 10 minutes to find what I was looking for, a glossy brochure from about 15 years ago. Investment opportunity, Tres Venus Vineyard Estate. Laura and I had visited that place one weekend, back when we still did those things together. She had hated it. She said it was too quiet, too rustic, not enough glamour, not her style. I flipped through the digital pages until I found the technical section I half remembered, the part about infrastructure for events. In small print, under the acoustic notes, it said something like, open spaces can produce significant echoes. Professional sound systems are recommended for speeches and toasts. All equipment should be tested carefully. I leaned back in my chair, just as Paulo brought me another coffee without asking. I thanked him in broken Portuguese, and he patted my shoulder. The wedding was in 3 weeks. Laura was about to marry Victor in a place whose sound carried every word. with a tag full of details and an official hashtag she proudly shared with the world. I scrolled through my contacts and found a number I hadn't used in years. It belonged to a man called Hugo Navarro, who used to run a high-end catering company before retiring to the coast. I had once helped him restructure a complicated deal that saved his business, and he told me I could call if I ever needed anything. I called. He answered on the third ring, surprised but pleased to hear from me. We chatted politely for 5 minutes, and then I told him exactly what I needed. Nothing dramatic, just a small favor. A name added to a list. A guest with a clean profile. A legitimate reason for one extra person to be at that wedding. Hugo was quiet for a moment, then I heard him chuckle softly. You know what, Marcos? I think I can arrange that. Consider it done. I thanked him and hung up. The sun was dipping toward the river. I had no intention of going to that wedding. I didn't need to be there, but I was going to make sure it was remembered. Elena called me 2 days later. It was early morning in Puerto Velho, which meant it was late at night in Puerto Azul. She doesn't waste words. Dad, she said, no hello. I saw Mom's posts. The wedding. This man, Victor. Do you know about him? I know. I answered, stepping out onto the balcony. Are you okay? She asked, her voice softer, testing for cracks. I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine. Your mother's choices are no longer my responsibility. Daniel is going, she blurted out after a pause. Victor asked him to stand with him at the ceremony. Mom called it a huge honor. Joining families. New beginnings. Daniel is eating it up. He thinks this proves she's moved on to someone better than you. I close my eyes. My son, smart enough to analyze markets, blind when it came to his mother's manipulation. And you? I asked. I got a very formal invitation, she said dryly. Very Laura. I said I couldn't go. She fell silent for a moment. Dad, I've been digging. Victor's car dealerships, something is off. On paper they look fine, but the pattern doesn't make sense. I've seen this before in other cases I've investigated. That's why Elena is good at what she does. She notices patterns other people ignore. What did you find? I asked. Nothing that would hold up in court yet, but his growth is wrong. He opened several new branches in less than 2 years. That takes huge capital. His credit lines are maxed. I suspect he's using fresh investor money to plug old holes. Classic pyramid behavior. If I'm right, it collapses within a few months. Also, there's a lawsuit brewing from an old partner, accusing him of fraud. It isn't public yet, but I found the filings. I stared at the river as a cargo ship slid slowly toward the sea. Does your mother know any of this? Of course not, Elena said. She sees the cars, the country estate, the lifestyle. She never looks under the hood. Dad, Daniel is standing right next to this mess. If Victor crashes in public, everyone attached to him gets splashed. You know what Daniel's bank will think if their junior analyst is intimately tied to a man facing fraud charges. What are you thinking? I asked. I'm thinking, she said slowly, that someone needs to make sure the right information comes out at the right time, before Daniel sinks any deeper. I smiled despite myself. My daughter, barely out of her 20s, already thinking 3 moves ahead. You know I can't be involved in anything that looks like sabotage. I warned her. You taught me that truth doesn't need sabotage, she replied. It just needs timing. She took a breath. I'm going to fly to Valle Sereno. I told Mom I changed my mind, that I want to support her fresh start. Elena, I started. Dad, Daniel is my brother. She cut in. He's being an idiot, but he's my idiot. If this wedding is going to be unforgettable, I want him to see what's really happening before it's too late. I heard her chuckle. Oh, and that favor you asked from Hugo. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I'm an investigative journalist. It's literally my job. I saw the extra name on the guests and vendors list. Edward Crane, family friend. Very subtle dad. Old school elegant. I like it. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said. Of course you don't, she replied. Love you, Dad. After we hung up, I stayed on the balcony a long time. My daughter was going to her mother's wedding, not to celebrate, but to document the crash. And somewhere in the countryside, a quiet older man named Edward Crane was about to become the most important guest no one remembered inviting. Daniel called 3 days before the ceremony. I almost didn't pick up. Since I left, he'd only sent one cold email saying he was disappointed in how I'd handled things. But I answered. Dad, he said, his tone stiff and formal. I'm calling because I think you should know. I'm going to stand at the altar with Victor. Elena mentioned it. I said. She's going too. She changed her mind. There was a thick silence. Victor's a good man, Daniel added. Successful. He treats Mom well. He is everything she deserves. The words hung there. Everything she deserves. Everything I supposedly wasn't. I'm glad your mother is happy, I replied calmly. Truly. It doesn't look that way, he snapped. You just ran away. You abandoned us. I walked away from a marriage that was killing me. I said quietly. Not from you or your sister. You left a note like you were quitting a summer job. He shot back. You and Mom were together almost 3 decades. You owed her more than that. For nearly 24 of those years, I tried to be enough, I answered. I chased moving standards. Every time I got close, she raised them. I had a heart attack, Daniel. The doctor made it clear the stress was going to finish what genetics started. I chose to save my life. If you see that as cowardice, then your mother has taught you well. He didn't answer. Daniel, I said more gently, I know men like Victor. Do me one favor. When you're up there beside him, pay attention, not to what he says, but to what he avoids saying. The best investors look at the foundations, not just the numbers on the surface. Don't forget that just because this is family. I don't need professional advice from you, he muttered. This isn't about your job. It's about your judgment, I said. Ask yourself how he built all of this so fast. Ask if the math adds up. Are you trying to poison this for me? He demanded. I'm trying to keep you from being collateral damage when reality catches up with appearances, I said. I have to go. The rehearsal is soon. Goodbye, Dad. The line went dead. Somewhere in Europe, my son was furious with me for leaving. In Puerto Azul, my daughter was packing for a wedding she expected to explode. And in Valle Sereno, Laura was about to marry a man whose empire was already cracking. I sent Elena a message. Look out for your brother. Her reply came back instantly. Already on it. I wasn't at the rehearsal dinner, but Elena sent updates, as if she were reporting from a battlefield. We arrived. Mom is jittery. Victor is overcompensating. Daniel's toast is about fresh starts. He doesn't mention you once. Edward just introduced himself to Victor as an old friend of the family. Victor believed every word. That last message made me smile. I pictured Victor shaking hands with a ghost from a past that never existed. Elena called an hour later, slightly breathless. It's perfect, Dad. Edward looks like someone's kindly grandfather. He has a whole backstory about knowing Mom's relatives in Montera. Total fiction, but he tells it so calmly that everyone believes him. How's your brother? I asked. Completely sold, she said. Victor gave him a speech about how a real man must be decisive and successful. The digs at you weren't subtle at all. I spent 20 minutes in the bathroom on my phone, checking records. Victor's dealerships asked for an extension on their quarterly reports. Awful sign. His main bank cut his credit line last month. The wedding itself, judging from the photos Elena sent me, was beautiful in a very staged way. Laura wore an ivory dress that probably cost more than my first car. White fabric and flowers everywhere. The ceremony moved smoothly. Their vows sounded like they'd been written by a company that specializes in generic romance speeches. Then came the reception. That's when the real story began. Elena's messages came rapid fire. Speeches starting. Maid of honor already cried. Way too early. Victor's brother made a joke about his expensive taste. Everyone laughed. Daniel's up now. I waited, my phone in my hand. After a few minutes, it rang. Dad, Elena whispered. You need to hear this. I'm recording. I heard Daniel's voice over the sound system, amplified by the perfect acoustics of the vineyard. Victor Lima is the kind of man we should all aspire to be, Daniel declared. He has built an empire with vision and drive. He treats my mother like a queen. He's shown me what real success looks like. To Victor and Laura, may your future be so bright that your past fades into the background. The message was clear. I was the past, the failure they'd stepped over. Applause. Clinking glasses. Then Elena again. Now Edward is going up. I heard the room grow quiet. A calm, older voice began to speak. Good evening, everyone. My name is Edward Crane, and I've known the Lima family for many years. The lies slid out like a well-rehearsed line. Tonight, I want to talk about something simple. Truth. Laura, you look radiant. Victor, you've made a strong impression. I've been in business a long time, and the ventures that last are the ones built on solid ground, not on appearances or promises. He paused, letting the echo carry his words. So I'd like to raise a toast. To Laura, who is taking a second chance at happiness. And to Marcos, wherever he is tonight, probably somewhere quiet, finally able to breathe. Laura, I hope you're sure that you traded up, because from where I'm standing it looks like you may have swapped firm ground for shifting sand. Silence flooded the room. You could feel it even through the recording. Then Edward's tone lightened. But what do I know? I'm just an old man who believes in asking questions. Like, how does someone open several new luxury dealerships in less than 2 years without conventional financing? Or why a successful businessman needs to restructure his credit lines every quarter? And what happens when the music stops and everyone realizes there aren't enough chairs for all the investors? I heard movement, chairs scraping, someone trying to take the microphone. Anyway, Edward finished gently, may your forever be stronger than your past, and may you both receive exactly what you truly deserve. The recording dissolved into chaos. Shouting, nervous laughter, the band cranking up music to bury the tension. Elena came back on the line, breathing hard. Dad, wow. Mom ran out. Victor's face went purple. Half the guests grabbed their phones. The other half pretended nothing was wrong. Mom is calling you. My phone started vibrating. Laura's name lit up the screen. I have to go, I told Elena. Stay close to your brother. I switched calls. Laura, I answered. Her voice shook with rage. You sent someone to destroy my wedding. You planted that man here. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said calmly. I'm in Portugal. Do not lie to me, she hissed. That speech, those questions, was it you? What if it wasn't me? I asked. What if it was just someone finally asking what should have been asked months ago? You're a coward. Marcos, she snarled. You didn't have the guts to face me, so you hired a hitman for my reputation. Your big day didn't fall apart because of me, I replied. It fell apart because you built it on sand and called it bedrock. I hate you, she said. I know, I answered. But that stopped being my problem the day I left. Go back to your party. Smile for the cameras. Do what you do best, perform. Victor will defend you, if he can explain his own balance sheets. Good luck. I hung up and looked out at the lights of Porto Velho reflecting in the river. Somewhere else in the world, my ex-wife's perfect wedding had just become legendary for all the wrong reasons. The video hit the internet within hours. Someone uploaded the toast to a short video platform with the title, Old Man's Speech Destroys the Bride's Night. Wait for the last line. By the next morning, it had millions of views. The exact moment when Laura's face froze as Edward said, shifting sand, turned into a looping meme on several platforms. Daniel called me not long after. His voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. Dad, Victor's dealerships are being audited. That lawsuit Edward hinted at was filed yesterday. The partner says Victor used investor money to cover personal debts. The banks have frozen his accounts. My firm called me. They asked if I knew anything about his finances before the wedding. I told them I didn't. They've put me on suspension while they review my judgment. They say I should have asked more questions. They're not sure they could trust me. I'm sorry, son, I said. Are you? He shot back. Because you knew. You saw this coming, and you let me walk straight into it. I warned you, I replied. I told you to look at the foundations. You called it sabotage. If I had told you directly, Victor is a fraud, would you have believed me? Or would you have defended your mother and called me bitter? He was quiet for a long time. I don't know. He admitted at last. Maybe you're right. Elena showed me everything. The filings, the mispayments. It was all right there. I just didn't want to see it. Mom said I was betraying her by asking questions, that I was choosing your side. I'm sorry, Daniel, I said again. The internet forgets quickly, but careers don't always heal as fast. You may have to carry this for a while. My judgment is on display for everyone, he said. Who's going to trust me with big decisions now? I didn't have a perfect answer, so I didn't pretend. We talked for another 20 minutes. He asked about Porto Velho, about my paintings, about whether I was truly happy. I told him the truth. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the best. 8 months after the wedding, the dust began to settle. Victor was indicted on 16 counts of fraud. Laura sold the apartment in Montera at a huge loss and moved into a small flat in a neighborhood she used to call rough. Her real estate license was suspended while regulators investigated her role. Daniel calls me every Sunday now. He's rebuilding from the bottom in a smaller division with less glamour and more hard work. It's humble, but it's honest. He told me he's seeing someone new, a schoolteacher named Sarah. Nothing flashy, Daddy said, but she's real. Elena, on the other hand, is on fire. Her investigations are winning awards. She told me she saw her mother last month. She looked smaller, Dad, Elena said. Not physically, just diminished. She asked if you were happy. I told her you're healthier than you've been in years. That you paint, that you laugh more. Mom cried. She said she wishes she'd listened when you asked to try therapy. Regret is a harsh teacher. Somewhere along the way, I met someone too. Her name is Camila. She's 50 and owns a tiny bookshop not far from my apartment. She didn't Google me. She didn't interrogate me about my income. She just listened. You look like someone who's been through something heavy, she told me once, but you made it out. That's what matters. Daniel came to visit Porto Velho not long ago. He spent 2 hours in Camila's shop talking to her about books. Over dinner, he pulled me aside. She's wonderful, Dad. She actually hears you when you talk. Are you happy? For the first time in decades, I asked myself that question seriously. Yes, I said. Truly happy. Good, he replied. You deserve that. Today, as I record this, I'm sitting on my balcony. Camila is reading Portuguese poetry out loud beside me, and I am sketching the curve of her profile. I've gone from being a stressed man, dying slowly in an expensive apartment, to someone who chose peace over appearances. My phone vibrates. It's a message from Daniel. Sarah said yes. We're engaged. We were thinking, what if we have the wedding in Porto Velho? Something small, real, with only the people who matter. Would you and Camila help us plan it? I looked at Camila, then at the river. Tell him yes, she said, smiling. It would be an honor. I typed back, congratulations, son. Porto Velho sounds perfect. We'll make it beautiful. The real kind of beautiful. His reply came at once. Thank you, Dad. For everything. For showing me what real strength looks like. Love you. I put the phone down. For once, I wasn't scanning the horizon, waiting for disaster or planning an escape. I was just living, finally, on solid ground. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If anything I said touched you, tap the like button. Tell me in the comments which part resonated with you the most and from which country you're listening. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because there are many more stories like this one on the way.